Welcome everyone to the Canarian International Meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. My name is Mossy and I am an alcoholic.
And my name is Mick. I also am an alcoholic and also serving as your secretary today. Please join us in a moment's silence to remember the still suffering alcoholic, both inside and outside this meeting.
And Jane is going to read the preamble for us.
Hi, my name is Jane and I am an alcoholic. The preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is the fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is an honest desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. Thank you for letting me do service.
Thank you, Jane. And a warm welcome goes out to any newcomers or anyone returning to Alcoholics Anonymous.
In this meeting, we celebrate AA birthdays. If you are celebrating a birthday, please message today's host in the chat, who is Mossy and myself, and we will celebrate together before the general sharing part of this meeting.
And the chat is now disabled until the end of the meeting, except for the meeting host. That's it, guys. This evening we're here to listen to Gilson share his experience, strength and hope. You have 45 minutes, Gilson. Actually, we won't stop you regardless how long you want. So it's all yours, my friend. And thanks again for joining us in the Canarian International Group.
Okay, Mossy, thank you. And thank you for inviting me to share today. It is a privilege. It's a privilege to be here. We are the lucky ones that have been offered a solution to this appalling illness. An illness that tells me I haven't got it, an illness that kills people that haven't got it. It's a dreadful scourge and an awful illness. As I said, my name is Gilson. I'm a recovering alcoholic. In February this year, I'll be celebrating 24 years of continued sobriety. But I am a retread. I first came into the rooms in 1980. I was around for 10 years. I went out and drank again. I was out there for about 7 years, something like that. I sort of lost count. I mean, I wasn't counting the days then. And I've been back, as I said, just coming up to 24 years now. Thanks to this wonderful fellowship, the love and patience, tolerance and forgiveness of the people that share this recovery journey with myself and those that I haven't even met yet. So God bless you all. I'm not going to labour the point about my youth, just to say I was running around with not much idea of what was going on. I was a scatterbrain. I was an airhead. I was just running around trying to get people to like me. And that theme of people pleasing and seeking approval is something that has run through my whole life, run through every aspect of my life. In some ways, it could be argued that that was my very first addiction and compulsive pattern of behavior, was that people pleasing, that codependency. I believe I was born with it, that spiritual malady. Later on, it manifested itself in dangerous drinking, dangerous drug taking, and dangerous habits that caused a lot of pain to myself, but more importantly to people around me. So that will do with my school life, really. There's not a lot to share apart from being a fool, a really shallow fool. And I suppose I started drinking more or less in earnest in my early teens. And I think we mentioned at the start of the meeting, I'm a professional musician. I used to be. I've just retired. I retired at the start of December after being a drummer for 60 years, a professional drummer. And I turned professional at the age of 15. And in those early years, I was drinking chaotically and living chaotically. I had the same immature, people-pleasing, seeking approval, personality going on in my life as I had when I was at school. And I was plying my trade all around Europe. I got to work with very many people in those early days. I've always been pretty good at what I did. I've got to get used to using the past tense. I was pretty good at it. And in those early days, I was playing drums with people like Chuck Berry and Jerry Lee Lewis and Dolly Parton and Skeeter Davis and all sorts of people. When they came over to Europe, it was the way things were arranged then through the unions. It's all different now, but in those days, American artists could only bring over, or I think it was 2 or 3 American musicians with them, and then they were compulsory. I'm dyslexic. I have trouble. I get words stuck in my mouth. I can hear them, but I can't say them. They had to. I'll limbo around that. They had to employ British musicians. The same. It was reciprocal. So English artists that went to America had to employ a certain number of American musicians, but it was a bit one-way traffic in those days. A lot of American artists coming over to Britain, but not many English artists going over to America. That all changed, of course, with the birth of pop music. But yeah, so that's why I got to play with all these various artists. I was working through a promoter called Mervyn Conn, who used to bring over a lot of American artists. And I played with, all these people. And I was pretty good, but I was also getting the hang of being a stupid drunk too. And many's the occasion when I was sitting at the back of a national coach. This is before the days of tour buses. We used to travel around in a national coach, a Greyhound bus for those Americans, that sort of thing. And I used to sit at the back getting drunk with whoever would sit in the back and get drunk with me, and that was just normal. But of course, I'd shake it off because I was young and I had a healthy body. This awful illness, it loves a healthy body and a sick mind, and that's what I had. And then I got famous. Well, not personally. The band I was in got famous. And we had hit records, quite a few actually hit records, and we started to tour America. And I was in that band for some 18 years, and we did get really, really successful. I was flying around first class, staying in the best hotels. In fact, I was when we were in New York, we were playing Madison Square Garden. I think we played it 2 or 3 times, but was it there or was it? I can't remember. It might have been a football stadium or something. But I remember we were staying in a very posh hotel on Central Park, the corner of Fifth Avenue and Central Park there, and I had a suite that overlooked the park, and by this stage I worked out, because I was a practicing alcoholic, that it was safer for me to sleep in the bath because I didn't have all that kerfuffle of trying to dry out sheets and air out mattresses in the morning. And I had a suite with silk sheets on the bed, but I was so smart that I thought it'd be better if I slept in the bath. Could you believe it? That was, and I thought I was being clever. That's how insane it was. I thought I'd sort of come up with a really, really good wheeze And I thought I was being so clever that I'm going to keep this to myself and not tell anybody else in the band because I'm so smart. Just insane behavior. Yeah, it was just crazy. But what was happening, unbeknownst to me, was not unbeknownst to me, I knew it was going on, was this the ability to perform, to actually apply my trade, to do my job, to play the drums. And it was and I had this window, this window in my evening where I had to have enough, and it's true, I had to have enough alcohol in my system to give me the courage, because I was riddled with fear, you know, I mean, the usual practice, an alcoholic, emotional turmoil, terrified of life, terrified of everything, including walking on stage. And so I had to have enough alcohol to get me on stage, but not so much alcohol that I couldn't do my job. And that window was getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, until in the end it just disappeared completely. And I was either too frightened, or I still got on stage, but I was so terrified I couldn't do the job. I was scared of doing anything, or I was too pissed to play, and then I would just make a fool of myself on stage. And the last show I played in that time was Madison Square Garden. And I walked out on stage, and there were actually people there in the audience holding up banners with my name on, Gilson. And I was terrified. I felt ashamed. I felt frightened. I felt vulnerable. I felt less than. I felt like I was I don't know, some sort of fraud, not some sort of, I was a fraud, pretending to be something that I wasn't, that imposter syndrome, you know, I was. Anyway, I did manage to get on stage, but I don't think I played very well. And I was sacked, you know, and it takes some doing to be sacked for being a drunk from a British New Wave band, you know. I mean, you got to go some. And I did go some. And so I came back to England with my emotional tail between my legs. And I was penniless. I had no money. It's easy enough to rip off a sober person in the music business, let alone a frightened, shuffling drunk, which I was. And so I had no money. I had nothing. And but I've always worked. And I got a job driving a minicab, a cab driver. Not a black cab driver. You got to qualify for that. No minicabs, you know, sort of private hire, I believe it's called around the world. 37 POB, and passenger on board POB, by the way. And so I got a job at Shaw Cars in Catford, Hither Green actually, and I there I was, a shuffling drunk, trying to earn a living as a minicab driver. A few weeks ago, I was walking on stage as a headline act at Madison Square Garden. Now I'm driving a minicab in South London, a rattly old second-hand car. Crash. Talk about alcoholic behaviour. Anyway, and I was driving around with a half a bottle of vodka in the glove compartment. In fact, I remember one of the passengers demanded that she just got in the car and demanded me that I had to let her out the next traffic lights because I stunk of vodka. That's how professional I was as a cab driver. And that's when I finally threw in the towel for the first time and came into AA. I can't actually remember phoning up the helpline, but I do remember Mayo Jim, who was my first sponsor in AA. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my video off, because my video camera shows a picture of me in my first year, way back when, standing next to Mayo Jim, who was my first sponsor. There he is. Can you see that? That's there's Mayo Jim, and that's me as a youth, as a 31-year-old, because I came in when I was 30, and that was about 31. There he is. God love him, Mayo Jim. He came and 12-stepped me, and he told me my story, and I've been a pop star, so to speak. Well, actually, I was. I don't know. I still feel embarrassed saying that term, but it's true. I was, and Mayo Jim had worked in the post office and been in the RAF, but he told me my story. You know, he told me about my emotions and how I felt and the insanity. What a wonderful man! And he drove me around to my first few meetings. In fact, I'll give you an idea. This is Mayo Jim. I'm on safer ground now because I'm talking about recovery and my time in the fellowship. I've got rid of all that other stuff. Thankfully, I don't really enjoy talking about it. So Mayo Jim, he took me around to my first few meetings, but this is an illustration of Jim. He was a loving, hard-nosed bastard. And when I first came round, I would get to 2 or 3 meetings, then have a drink, and then have 2 or 3 drinks and get to a meeting. You know, it was that ducking and diving and trying not to, but I did. And I suppose all in all, it took me about 6 months to finally put the drink down that first time round. Anyway, in one of these exercises of me testing the water of alcoholism again, you know, going to a meeting, then picking up a drink, and then phoning up Jim and saying, "Oh, Jim, I'm ever so sorry, I've had another drink." In one of these occasions, I picked up the phone and I said to Jim, "Oh, Jim, I've done it again. I'm so sorry. I've picked up a drink." And he said, "Oh, well, it's another day." I wish I could do his wonderful Irish accent, but I can't. He said, "Oh, well, it's another day today. Don't pick up a drink and I'll take you to a meeting this evening." And then I said these famous words, famous in my life. "Oh, but Jim, I want you to know that I really respect you." And he said, "Oh, fuck off," and slammed the phone down. And he was right. I was absolutely shell-shocked. It got me where it really hurt, in my people-pleasing codependency, frightened, childish self. Oh my God. And I think actually that was the thing that finally stopped me drinking, was that was Jim telling me just to go fuck myself. Just, oh, thank you, Jim. Anyway, you know, Jim, he was a wonderful, wonderful man. In fact, I've got his big book. God bless him. His family. He told his family he died. He had dementia. In the end, he was put in a home, and it wasn't very comfortable for him. He wasn't happy anyway. But before he went into the home, he had told his family that he wanted me to have his AA literature and his AA big book, and I've still got it, and it's there in my bookcase there. And quite often actually, I get it out and I open it up, and it's got all his highlighting and underlining and references, and it's like he's there with me still, and he is still there with me. Such a wise man. And I'll share another one of Mayo Jim's wisdoms. I remember standing outside of a meeting, feeling really sorry for myself. Oh God, oh God. And Jim said, "What's the matter with you?" I said, "Oh, Jim, I want to know, when do I get these gifts I keep hearing about?" And he said to me, "Gilson, the gifts have always been there. It's you that can't see them." Oh, cool, straight over my head. But that's so true. It was me that couldn't see the truth. It was me that couldn't see the reality of life. I was still living in the sickness. And I've been practicing living in the sickness my whole life up until that point, up until the age of 30 or 31, it probably was then. You know, living in shame, living in guilt, living in excuses, living in justifications, living in rationalizations, you know, that's the only way I could fit my insanity into life. was to sort of create this alternate universe where I could, I don't know, forgive myself. I don't, but excuse, that's the word, where I could excuse my behavior and my lies and my shirking responsibilities. But God bless him, yeah, wonderful man. And he another thing he told me in those early days, and this is all Jim, it's not me. He told me, he said, you know, any fool can work this program on a good day. It's working it on those tough days. That's when the recovery happens. Yes, Jim. Yes, thank you, Jim. Absolutely true. Anyway, so I was around the rooms for 10 years and I brought my illness in with me, and I was so poorly, and this isn't a competition. I'm sure there's people that were or are that have brought their own particular war wounds, because I believe probably we all come into recovery with various war wounds, and some of them are visible, some of them are internal, some of them are spiritual, some of them are emotional. In my case, I look pretty good because I've got used to trying to look pretty good with my job and putting on a performance and trying to get people to like me. But internally, I was really, really screwed up. And I brought my sickness in with me, my people pleasing, my seeking approval. And it was so broad, so wide, so deep, so part of my psyche, it didn't have any sides. It completely encompassed me. Everything I saw, felt, was through this prism of codependency, of wanting to be liked, all rooted in fear. If you like me, you won't hurt me or embarrass me or shame me. You know, that it's all rooted in fear and ego, of course. And so I proceeded to be around the rooms for 10 years and not really recover, have no spiritual recovery. But what I did do is, as I've been doing my whole life, is I learnt how to act as though. I learnt how to pretend I was recovering. And I honestly believed, well, did I believe it? Well, I didn't think any deeper than this, but I thought if I could convince everybody, especially in the meetings, that I was all right, then I was all right. And if I could convince my family that I was all right, then I was all right. How I actually was didn't come into it. I hadn't reached that part of me that really matters, that inside me, that self, that vulnerable, childlike, fearful ball of God-given truth that was there deep inside me. I hadn't touched it. I hadn't reached it. I hadn't recognized it. My whole life was still a performance. And the result was, after 10 years of this insanity, I picked up a drink. Now my career had come back. After, a year or maybe 18 months of driving a minicab, and the band tried to go it without me in it, and I had no success. Their next album bombed and they weren't getting anywhere. They thought, if we get Gilson back, then it might, our luck might change. So they phoned me up one day and said, we're going to do a gig in a pub in South London. Do you want to come and play with us? I thought, oh, okay, yeah, I did. So there I was driving a cab all day, and then I wasn't drinking now, so I put down the drink about a year ago, and I drove to this, took my minicab to this pub, played a gig with them, and it was great. Well, they said it was. I really struggled through it, but because I hadn't been playing the drums for a year, God knows it was hard work. But they said, no, it was really good. Come and rejoin us, because I wasn't drinking. And of course, we made an album and we had more hit records. So maybe it was me. I don't know. But we had more hit records, and I was off around the world doing that old stuff. Except this time I was doing it without a drink. But I was nuts. As I just said, I was people pleasing and seeking approval. That the band actually, by now, we were using a tour bus in America. And they were all down the end of the tour bus, drinking and drugging and doing all sorts of nefarious things. And I was traveling at the front of the bus with the driver because he wasn't drinking or smoking dope or taking coke or doing any of that stuff. And I spent, God knows, 8 or 9 years on the road doing that. God, dear, talk about white knuckling it. But anyway, I did it. Anyway, after this period of time, and having no spiritual recovery, the marriage I was in at the time was getting pretty, I don't know, it wasn't uncomfortable. It was comfortable, but we were living like brother and sister because I was a lunatic and we weren't really together as a couple. And then this lady who wasn't very well showed some sexual interest in me, and that was enough to tempt me away from my then long-suffering wife, take up with this crazy woman who pressed my lust buttons, and I had no defense against my first lust. And I left my wife and I took up with this crazy woman. And I remember I was sitting in a pub not far from where I am now, some 30 years ago, God almighty, some 30 years ago now. And I was sitting in this pub and she was ordering herself a triple gin and tonic, which is what she used to drink. That gives you some sort of idea of how she was. And I was ordering my Diet Coke and she said, go and have a proper drink. I'll look after you. She said those words. So I did. I had a proper drink, which was half a something or other. And of course, that let loose the beast. And of course, she didn't look after me. Nobody could. And that was the start of that 7 years of insanity. That relationship with that crazy woman lasted a year. I managed to wriggle out of it. Even that was really tough. I was in loads of emotional pain because of my breakup with my long-suffering wife and taken up with this crazy woman who I knew was making me sicker than I already was, and I was drinking and I didn't have the character or the emotional strength to leave her, although I kept trying to, and I certainly didn't have the strength to stop drinking, and I got sacked again from the band, because I was drunk again, and so I managed to get sacked twice from the same band. Anyway, one of the chaps that was in that band with me started another outfit, just a piano player actually. And I was sitting here in where I am now, actually, although it was a hovel then. It's not a hovel now. It's a magnificent house in the country, but then it was a hovel. And really was a hovel. We're talking rat runs and no roof and all. Anyway, I haven't got time for everything. And he phoned me up and he said, I want you to come and do some shows with me, just piano and drums. And I didn't want to do it anymore because I said, look, I can't do this. I can't stay sober and be in the, I didn't say that to him. I said it to me. I can't stay sober and be in the music business. Now I'm blaming the music business for the fact that I'm drinking. And it wasn't. It's nothing to do with the music business. It's because I'm an alcoholic. That's why I was drinking. Anyway, he asked me again and again. And then the fourth time, I've only got 3 no's in me. I've discovered that over the years. I've got 3 no's and then I say yes. And it's just the way it is, fuck me. And eventually I said yes. And we went out as a duo. And he asked me if I was drinking and I lied and said, no, I'm not, but I was. And then that 7 years of secret drinking started. And it all came, again, another huge success in the music business. That duo turned into an orchestra. We were playing the biggest venues in Europe, the biggest venues in Great Britain, like the Royal Albert Hall and and we had a regular TV show, and we were playing. It just all went off again. And all through this, I was secretly drinking and smoking dope and pretending I remarried to the lady that's in the kitchen now, keeping our dinner warm, who's out in the kitchen now. We've been married over 30 years now, God bless her. So, so there I was again on the road doing all this stuff, secretly drinking, and I got very good at secretly drinking. What would happen is I'd be going away for 3 or 4 days on the trot. It wouldn't be going off to America, although we did, but it was mainly in this country in Europe. And I'd be away for 4 days, 5 days maybe, and then home for a couple of days or 3 days. And I'd leave the house, bye-bye, pet. I'd say, bye-bye, sweetheart. And I'd drive out and I'd stop. First thing I'd do is stop at the off license, buy myself a half a bottle of vodka. Then I'd stop at the dope dealers and get myself half an ounce of dope, whatever he had. And then I'd stop at the paper shop and get myself a girly magazine, and I'd be off. And then I'd be off on the road, staying in concrete boxes, hotels around the country. And I knew exactly how much I could drink and smoke. I wouldn't drink at all during the day because I couldn't function, and I'd be found out. But after the shows and I got back to the hotel, I'd phone up the wife and I'd say, hello. And she'd say, hello, sweetheart, how did the show go? And I'd say, oh, it went really well. Yes, it was great. And as the phone went down, the vodka would come up and the spliff would go. And I knew exactly how much to drink. I knew that if I drank down to the bottom of the Smirnoff label and threw the rest away, and I did do that, because I knew if I kept it, I'd be tempted to have a drink in the morning, and I couldn't risk that. And I did that night after night after night, after week after week, after month after month, while I was on the road. And we were away playing a corporate show in, I better hurry up, and I look at the time. We were playing a corporate show in, where was it? Somewhere. It wasn't the Caribbean, it was somewhere like that. I can't remember. We'd flown out there to do this corporate thing, the whole orchestra. We used to do a lot of corporate work, and they'd even hired a plane to fly us out there, like a 747. So the only people on the plane were us, because they wanted the people that were. It was actually for Audi. All the salespeople and the managers and all this. It was like a big Beano for them in the days when companies had Beanos. It's all changed now. And Bermuda, that's where it was. It was in Bermuda. Anyway, so we flew out and we were out there for a week, and I decided that it's about time I got my act together. I've been doing this secret drinking, and I was a right miserable bastard. Of course I was. I've been lying, cheating, and stealing people's security, and just being a dickhead for all this time. Although I was putting on a show, you got to remember, people pleasing. They thought I was one of the boys, but I wasn't. It was a pretense. And we were out there for a week, and I decided before I went out there that I'm going to straighten up. I couldn't take any dope out there with me in case I got caught. And I'll get some vodka when I'm out there. So I didn't have any vodka. And my higher power, God love him, God, decided that I'd had enough of taking happy pills. I was on them too. Of course I was. So I threw those in the bin. So I'm going to give up on the cold turkey. It'll be great. It'll be fantastic. So out we went to Bermuda. And I said, well, and let me tell you, if anybody goes to Bermuda and you start looking for an off license, I hope you don't. We're all in recovery. You'll have a lot of trouble because there are no off licenses in Bermuda. You can't. And we were in this hotel that was the back of beyond. There was nothing there. And I was doing cold turkey. I didn't have any dope, didn't have any vodka, didn't have any pills. And I was going insane. So my answer to this was to hire a moped. I hired a moped and I was off riding round Bermuda looking for somewhere I could buy some vodka. Couldn't find anywhere. I kept falling off the bloody moped. Oh God, it was a catastrophe. Anyway, we did the show after a week of this insanity, and I really was going insane. And we were flying back, and I couldn't take it anymore. So I pressed the little button on the thing, and I told the air hostess, I want 2 miniature vodkas. And they brought out these little miniature bottles for me. And so, and of course, the cat was out the bag then. Gilson's drinking. Oh, Lord, oh, no. They didn't know I've been drinking for the last 7 years. And so my last drink, which is true, was in the business section of a 747 flying back from Bermuda. God dear me, talk about middle class. That was my last drink, and it was pathetic. But what that did was it freed me at last, because the people I worked with knew that I was drinking. And then when I got home, of course, I owned up to my wife. We'd been married several years by then. We'd had a boy. He was 2 years old, I think. Little Gilly. He's 28 now. He's working with special needs kids. He doesn't drink and he doesn't smoke. Oh, God. I don't know how that happened. Anyway, God bless him. He's a lovely lad, got a heart of gold. I digress. I had to own up to my wife that I've been drinking like these 7 years or whatever it is. We've been married 6 years, I think it was. I can't remember. Anyway, I still remember the look in her eyes. It was one of sheer shock and confusion and fear and, oh, I don't know really, just loss. She'd realised that she'd been living with a fraud. She'd married a fraud, and that shook me, and it, more importantly, it shook her through to the roots. You know, but that's when I finally got back into AA, and that was some nearly 24 years ago, 23 years ago. Let's be accurate. It is still 23 years and 11 months and 3 weeks or something. So, and when I came back into AA, I came back in with exactly the same shortcomings and character defects that I came in with. This people pleasing, wanted to be liked, trying to convince everybody in the rooms that I was all right, and how I actually was didn't really matter. Still believing, I think, in my heart of hearts, that I didn't have to work a program. The program was for people who were really poorly, not me. The big book was for, but as long as I said I read the big book, I didn't actually have to read the big book, you know. All I needed to do was to learn some phrases and some odd highlights. And Mayo Jim had passed away by now. God bless him. And after 2 years of this insanity, I wanted to die. I truly wanted to die. And I had this emotional and spiritual rock bottom. And that is the epitome of a spiritual rock bottom, is wanting to die. And in hindsight now, with some sort of better idea of reality than I had then, I think what I really wanted was the confusion and that horrible noise and that horrible churning in my guts. I wanted that to stop. I didn't want life to stop. I just wanted some peace. And I couldn't see any way of getting it apart from killing myself. Of course I didn't, and I'm the proof that it didn't work. An AA member actually called in as I was about to leave and drive out into the fens. I live in Lincolnshire. Drive out into the fens and kill myself. He stopped in front of my car, and it wasn't a plan. He didn't know where I was going, but he asked me where I was off to, and I told him the truth. I said, I'm off to kill myself. Anyway, he took me to a meeting, and then another meeting and another meeting. And then after a couple of weeks, it might have been 4 weeks, I had this epiphany, this awakening, this realization. And this realization, the thing that finally broke this awful concept of reality, was that I realized that I was the problem. What I thought was good was bad. What I thought was right was wrong. What I thought was worthwhile was worthless. What I thought was powerful was weak. What I thought was weak was powerful. You know, everything was wrong. My whole concept of life was screwed. My perception of life was just so messed up. And that's when I truly believe I started to get well. I truly believe in my heart of hearts and to the bottom of my soul that God touched me that day and gave me the gift of the opportunity, not the gift of recovery, but the opportunity to recover. That's what I think he gave me. And I still remember that feeling. And I sat up all night, because I didn't want to lose this feeling, this understanding, this reality. And as the dawn came up, when it came up, here in Lincolnshire, this feeling dissipated. But I'd touched it, I'd felt it, I knew it. And what happened was the truth, was absolutely the truth. And I understood this. And the second half of step 1 actually became a lifeline to me, where I realized and understood at last that my life was unmanageable. Every part of my life was unmanageable, not just the bits that people saw, but the bits that went on inside me, my emotions, my intellect, my spirituality. It was all, I had no power over it. It was all worn out and useless, stoked with the fire of my sickness. And the calming winds and the calming breezes of recovery hadn't touched it. I had to accept that my life was unmanageable. And then I tried my best to work the program. And I believe I made a pretty good fist of it because I reached a point where I understood in working the 12-step program what the second half of step 12 really means too, which is to practice these principles in all my affairs. And that's such an eye-opener for somebody like me, for somebody with my sickness, because my illness, my disease, still wants me to people please. It still wants me to impress you all, so you all think that this is the best share you've ever heard. It still wants me to get a pat on the back and say, well done, Gilson. God is a leading light in this program, isn't he? God, he does so much stuff. And I know that's my illness talking to me. That's the old me. Practicing these principles in all my affairs means practicing these principles everywhere and in all manner of thoughts and actions, not just in what people see and what I will get a round of applause for, but in those dark moments when there's nobody but me and my God or my higher power, when there's nobody but me and my truth. And those are the moments when I really need to understand that practicing these principles in all my affairs is where the keys to the kingdom lie. The keys to this universe, this breath, the sunshine of the Spirit, the freedom from the sickness, the freedom from the beast, from the roaring need to be liked or to be wanted or to be, all that has been lifted as long as I stay or try to stay in fit spiritual condition. I'm running out of breath is my My COPD is getting me. I'm going to shut up now. Thank you for listening. God bless. Oh, just made it under the wire.
Thanks so much, Gilson. I have to say, before we go any further, I was a fan. I'm delighted you came. You have an amazing story. I got a lot from it. I'm sitting here in my home and it's full of love. My daughter's online here. All my kids speak to me. My grandchildren speak to me. No matter where I go, I'm surrounded by love. And it's because of this fellowship. And because of addiction, my brother's lying in the morgue. And he was my hero as a child. Yet we haven't spoke for 20 years. I'm so grateful to hear your story today. I'm so grateful for the support that I've got from Alcoholics Anonymous for the last 35 years. I'm blessed to be here. And I'm blessed with the friends and the family that I have with me. I'm going to leave it at that. Again, Gilson, thanks so much for joining us. I hope you join us again. Over to you there, Mick.
Thank you, Mossy. Thank you, Gilson. Thank you for a fantastic story. You know, I loved what you said. You know, I remember you reminded me. I said to my sponsor, you know, I said to him, I can't find God. And he said, Mick, God's not lost, but you are. And I understood that. And I loved what you said about the gift, the opportunity. You know, I've always tell people we get a gift given us, but it isn't it? I really believe what you just said. It's an opportunity, and if we choose to use it, that we can get well and stay well. And that's, you know, I have a life beyond my wildest dreams today through people like you and everyone in this room who's either new or not new. You know, I listen to your story and I think to myself, I haven't done that. You know, I'll try that. And I found out by doing little silly things like that I stay sober.
My name's Carol, I'm an alcoholic. Lovely meeting. If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we will be amazed before we were halfway through. We are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past, nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity, and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Are these extravagant promises? We think not. They are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always materialize if we work for them. Thank you.
Thanks, Carol. And lost my train of thought. Sorry. Thanks, Carol. And thanks to all the co-hosts, our timekeeper, Kathleen, and Mark and Mossan for doing the screen sharing. And Gilson, thanks again so much for joining us this evening. I hope your dinner you have a lovely dinner, and I hope we didn't spoil it too much by dragging the meeting on. Just a reminder, guys, this meeting is on every Saturday. We're also on every Sunday at 1 o'clock for the Step 11 meditation meeting. Thursday evenings, we're at 7:30. And we're on every single morning at 8:30 in the morning, and so do join us. The meeting codes are always the same, and they're gone back up there again. It'll be lovely to see you coming back. And at that, Gilson, would you lead us out with the serenity prayer? Oh, sorry, I'll unmute you again. There you go.
Yeah, I'm muted. Yeah, Gilson, thank you so much for all your shares back and those that didn't share back but stayed for the duration. God bless you all. And just a quick word, if you don't mind, to Sonia. The only person that can stop you getting well is you. You have that gift in front of you. Would you join me in the serenity prayer using the word God as you do, or may come to understand, please? God.
God.
God,
We can assume things are going later and they say, I would not assume. Thy will, not mine, be done. Amen.
Thanks, Gilson. Fabulous.
Thank you,
share.
Gilson.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Oh,
Gilson.
well done.
Everybody.